Hi, I'm Marc Thompson, also known as Obi Marc from Echo Base and the Rebel Legion. And I'm joined today by two incredibly talented friends of mine to talk a little bit about the world of Star Wars audiobooks. First off, we have Kevin Thompson. Kevin is an incredibly gifted director and producer. He co-created, wrote, and voice directed his own animated series for MTV called Spy Groove. The short film he scripted, The Quality of Mercy, was featured on HBO and shortlisted for an Oscar nomination. And he is very well renowned in the audiobook industry. His production company has produced over 1,500 projects, and he has won multiple Audie and Earphone Awards. Two of his projects have won Grammys. And if you're a fan of the Star Wars audiobooks, Kevin has directed and produced the vast majority of them, and even won a golden record for the Phantom Menace tie-in. I think we might get to see it right now. Bum, bum, bum. So in front of your computers, please give a round of applause for Kevin Thompson.
That's a cassette, just so you know. That's a cassette.
Oh, that's a cassette. Wow.
Yes.
You didn't say you had a golden cassette.
Yeah.
Next up, we have January LaVoy. January is an amazing award-winning actress. She's done everything. She's done off-Broadway, Broadway, film, television. She plays Noelle Ortiz Stubbs on the long-running ABC daytime drama One Life to Live. She's guest starred on Elementary, Blue Bloods, Nosferatu. She's beloved in the audiobook community. She's an AudioFile magazine golden voice since May 2019. She has hundreds of audiobook titles to her credit. She's received more than 30 Earphone Awards, 18 Audio Award nominations, including 7 wins. She was named the Publisher Weekly's Audiobook Narrator of the Year for 2013. And Star Wars fans will know her from narrating many, many of the Star Wars audiobooks, including Dawn of the Jedi, Into the Void, Phasma, Bloodline, New Republic, and Victory's Price, the Alphabet Squadron series. And when she's not doing all of that, she's a full-time faculty member in the Department of Theater and Dance at Emory University. So please, in front of your computer, welcome January LaVoy.
Thanks, Marc.
To start off, I just wanted to ask both of you, and I guess, Kevin, we can go first with you, but were you guys Star Wars fans growing up?
Oh, yeah. I was a fan. I saw, I was living in the Bay Area in the East Bay, and in 1977, I was in the Berkeley Hills shooting a 16 millimeter rear screen projection sci-fi short. And we all came down out of the hills one day of shooting to the Elmwood Theater in Elmwood, in the section of Berkeley, to see The Man Who Fell to Earth, starring David Bowie. And a trailer before it played for Star Wars. And we were literally like the Maxwell commercial, blown back with our hair. And then we had to sit through The Man Who Fell to Earth to watch the trailer again. And then we all left with stars in our eyes. Like, oh my God, it changed everything. And then saw it probably 4 or 5 times in the theaters, the next ones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I started working, by like 1994, I was working in the audiobook industry. And then my very first project, the second thing I worked on, the second and third things I worked on were doing the audiobook version of the first of episodes 4, 5, and 6.
Wow.
Right? Which had never been done in audio for Time Warner Audiobooks. And then with Tony Roberts narrating them.
Oh, wow.
So if you get a chance, I'm not sure you can find it, but if you
Wow.
can, and they're abridged, which is not the best way to listen to anything, but you will hear Han Solo sounding a little teeny bit like Humphrey Bogart.
Now I have to find it.
Which is a little weird. And his Yoda was less than Yoda. I'll just put it at that. And then the second or third thing I did, I don't remember which one I did first. Then I did Tales of the Jedi, which was a Dark Horse comic book, graphic novel, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And with a cast of 25 actors playing 50-something characters. And it was just huge. I mean, just like diving into the deep end. And Marc Fierstein, the actor, he was in it, played one of the leads back when he was like nobody. Played a Twi'lek, I think, or something. I don't remember. Anyway, you can find that sort of, and then I've been a fan ever since. And I've just for the past 27, 28 years, been working on the Star Wars stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm done.
January, how about you? Were you a fan?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was born in 75, So, I don't have a memory of a world really before Star Wars was in it. And to be a small child, I mean, I was just recently looking through some old family photos, and there are pictures of, all the kids in the neighborhood, going around for trick or treat. And like everyone was a Star Wars character, when I was 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, you didn't see a grouping of how kids dressed up for Halloween where someone wasn't. And I remember playing, Star Wars out on the playground in elementary school. We would act out all the movies and everything. So it was just always a part of my life.
Yeah.
So it's never been, I just don't have I don't have a pre-Star Wars consciousness. So then being asked to be a part of the audiobook world, and then, as a result of that, getting to go to Celebration. We went to Celebration in Anaheim. What year was that, Mark? Was it 14?
I think that one was either 15 or 17. I can't remember now.
I think it was 15. I think it was 15. And, walking in and just feeling this sense of like, these are my people. Like I didn't realize, you walk into the convention center and it's just ceiling to floor, wall to wall. But to me, it feels like the same creativity we were exhibiting on the playground. It's like, we're going to tell this story in our way because we have our own rules and we have our own ideas and we have our own expansions of characters and plot lines. And I don't know, it was like I just remember feeling this direct line from being like 6 years old to walking into that celebration and feeling like the whole thing had come full circle for me. So yeah, always, it's just always been a part of it.
So cool. Like Kevin, you mentioned a little bit when you started, but like it's been a while. Do you guys know about how many Star Wars audiobooks you guys have done?
Together or separately?
Separately. You've done a lot more than I have.
I mean, I don't know. I keep meaning to count, but just guessing off something you said to me one day, Mark, you guessed how many you had done. So I would guess like 180 to 190. I get 180 to 1190. I would guess.
Wow. Oh, it's amazing.
It might be much less than that. I don't know. I need to count.
Yeah.
I've probably done 12 at this point, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably about a dozen. Mm-hmm.
And then before we started, did you say Into the Void was the first one that you had worked
That was
on?
the first one, yeah. And I remember I was in California and Kevin called me. You don't usually, you don't usually have direct contact, or everything's over email or whatnot. And, I had recorded an audition for it and I was really excited. And I kept this voicemail for a very long time, Kevin. But it was, you called me and you were like, you're going to be a Star Wars narrator. And I was so excited. I was so excited. I listened to it like 6 times. But it was a very big deal. It felt very special to be invited into this world because, it's not a place that, I mean, it's, as far as fandom goes, it's a place where, we all have access and we all find our ways in, but this feels like this sort of, as you know, Mark, like sort of like very tight community of folks who get to the privilege of getting to do this work. So it's really exciting.
So cool. So I'll start with Kevin, but I'd love to hear both of your answers to this. Like, what is your process like when you're kind of, you first get the script and, you have to start working on this? What are the steps you guys take to get ready to do this?
I guess first is kind of to figure out casting and reading it and kind of going through it that way. And then once you do that, kind of then the pronunciation list, because as you're reading and making a pronunciation list and kind of making note of things. And depending if it's like a High Republic book or one of those, it was figuring out like, what will I need? Like new sound effects and starting to make a list of those. And that process begins almost as soon as I finish reading it. I get the list and start talking to Paul Goodrich at Merlin to begin that process. But that can take 2 or 3 weeks of kind of back and forth, like, versions of things. Like we just did a series, we're actually ongoing now for Shatterpoint, the re-release of Shatterpoint.
Which will be unabridged,
which will be unabridged, yes. So we just finished recording yesterday. And I can't say who's narrating it, I guess. They haven't released that yet.
Okay.
Have they? I don't think they have.
I don't think so.
I don't think they have, yeah. But it's a great book. Matt Stover, who also did the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, which is, I mean, in my opinion, many others' opinion, is the best novelization of any of the movies. If you haven't read it, it's incredible. It's just like it just the whole thing just blows up. Then after the sound effects, you start prepping for the recording, and then scheduling, and then recording is a long process. That's a whole kind of world into itself. And then as I'm recording, I always record on for me, a hard copy, which is kind of an anachronism in our business. Everyone works off an iPad, everyone. And because I'm marking the script for the mix and for the music. And it's just a lot quicker to do it that way. If I did it on an iPad, it would take me forever. Like I'd stop, type, go back, circle, no, go back, circle, or highlight or whatever. But this way, I have a series of highlighters. I buy them by the bushel, and nice, good quality pens. And I buy reams of paper. I've bought maybe 3 reams of paper in the past year to print up scripts for some Star Wars titles and other titles that I'm working on. And then I have lots of fire stuff to burn in the fire pit afterwards. And then when I'm done, I scan the script, which is, again, sort of an anachronism. And so Paul at Merlin can begin the process of the pre-mix, which is a long process. And then we worked together on maybe 500 projects over the past 28 years. So, I mean, not just Star Wars, but a lot of other stuff. Like anything that's kind of big and needs, music and sound effects kind of thing, audio dramas, whatever. And then there's an edit, and then there's we actually mix together. We've done it remote for the past 14 months, which has been kind of a trial. But we did Doc Afra, all the High Republic books, Shatterpoint, and some other stuff just kind of in between. Through various, Zoom and Source Connect. We usually have 2 things running, and that takes many, many hours, and then we're done.
Wow.
And it's amazing.
Like, you've told me horror stories. What's the latest you've stayed up during a mix?
Oh, well.
How many consecutive days?
A lot. Well, before we spent a lot of time. We've done this a lot, first of all, obviously. So we've gotten the process down to kind of, as efficient but as productive as possible. And that's the thing, is that we both feel we're both huge science fiction fans, not just Star Wars fans. So we understand the weight that is upon us to keep the balloon in the air, right? To keep the clouds fluffy and above us, right? And so we were mixing something, and it was one of those like around the clock, a crunch, because the script came in late, whatever. So we're just behind, and we were mixing around the clock. We mixed all night, and Revenge of the Sith was opening the next day, right? And this is before they started the midnight shows, right? So they had an 8 a.m. show in Times Square for all the licensors, right? So me and Paul walked from 46th down to 42nd to one of the AMC theater, and we walk in, and I slept through half the movie. Because I knew it. Right?
Yeah, right.
We'd already done the audiobook. The audiobook came out, so I'm watching, so, okay, yeah, we did that, and and then I slept through Order 66 completely.
Oh no!
Completely. Anyway, but yeah, but we've gotten it down though, so we know pretty much exactly how much time we'll need, and then sometimes it goes longer, but rarely past midnight these days.
Okay, that's much
better. We're seasoned professionals.
January, what's your preparation process like?
So in some ways, it's very similar to any audiobook, which is that I just read the book first, and I try very hard. I'm sort of a light marker when it comes to marking up my scripts. I try very hard to read the book as a fan and not as a narrator, because I just want to note the moments where I'm surprised. If there's a moment where I gasp when I'm reading the book, it's my job to make sure that I offer that same opportunity to the listener. So I just try to read it and sort of just, I'm also sort of there's some redundancy built in that I'm also looking for words I don't know how to pronounce, or things that we need to run by Leland or whatever, so that we can figure out what, that we're all on the same page in terms of how words have been said historically. Sometimes there are discrepancies historically. And so, yeah, I try to read the book, and then I particularly with Star Wars books, I'm looking for any descriptors. Again, Mark, I'm sure you maybe experienced something similar to this, but anything that talks about like the shape of a face or a quality that describes a voice, that then I can take that into the studio and apply it to the sound of the character. Because some of them sometimes we encounter new species that no one's ever voiced before. Maybe they've been written about or referred to, but if no one's ever voiced it before, and Kevin and I have had these conversations, I'm sure you do too, about like, what do we think this sounds like? What do we want this to be? So that's one of the most fun and kind of unique things about working on these books.
That's awesome. Kevin, what do you feel makes a good storyteller? Like, as a director, how do you help your narrators be good storytellers, and what qualities are you trying to get them to have?
Wow, that's such a big question. Usually the people that are hired for something like this have done it before, so their experience, that's a real important part. So you're not having to go through a lot of the basic stuff. You might go with a narrator's work for the first time. But a sense of fun is really important. A sense of fun, that childishness January talked about, that gasping moment of, oh my God!
Wow.
Of, when the curtain goes up and you go, oh! You want someone who can, because all a lot of fiction is just a series of revelations. You're just revealing stuff in a certain order, in a certain way. The curtain, sometimes a door, sometimes a curtain, sometimes it's, opens that way. But finding a person who can do that, who can be surprised themselves, because the listener is enjoying it through their eyes usually, right? So you want to create that enough reality so they can slip into the narrator, their experience, and then along with them, holding hands or sitting in their lap, enjoy all these moments of, oh my God. And that's also, that's
I think,
and also, I mean, being able to do voices and stuff is important, but it's not as important, because I can do a lot of sound processing. Wow. And then a person who can also, I think it helps to be able to do imitations sort of the characters, the legend characters especially, I think is important, because the fans expect that, but we're given I think a little freedom often because of the way that Clone Wars and the cartoons have approached the voices, where they do their version of Yoda or their version of, which kind of which I appreciate. And I actually, after a couple of decades of doing this, Marc knows, we were there, changed the way I thought about doing the tie-ins. Yeah. Right? Remember this? It was, and Jenny, we've talked about this too, the idea that it's not like we're doing our version of the movie. It's that the events actually happened. And the movie is one version of those events. And we're doing our version of the events, right? And the comics might have another version of the events or whatever. I think that's important. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to what Kevin was saying about a sense of fun. I remember us having these conversations when I first became a Star Wars narrator, and I took it so seriously, and I took the fandom and the fan expectations so seriously that I wasn't having the kind of fun I needed to have in order to be able to deliver that kind of experience. And I remember us having conversations about that. So I think, for me, it's that balance of like, I don't ever want anyone to think that I'm not taking this very seriously and like delivering something that lives inside the world of their expectations and their hopes for the product. But at the same time, to be able to inject your sense of humor, because it's all there, the tremendous sense of humor in all of this that we're doing and everything, tragedy, comedy, all of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there was a sense, especially in the pre-Disney stuff, what now is Legends, because we were literally building tunnels well beyond
Yeah.
where anything else was.
Yeah.
And we're like going and like, putting up, little pieces of wood and digging and hoping it doesn't crash in on us, right?
Yeah.
And expecting all the fans to follow us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the metaphor. And
Yep.
so there is a huge responsibility to keep the reality of this going, because you are creating, a house people are going to live in for, decades to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. No pressure.
Exactly.
So January, we mentioned earlier in your introduction, but you've done a lot of different types of acting. You've done film and television. How does doing audiobooks compare to stage or film or TV? And how does doing specifically Star Wars audiobooks compare to perhaps other audiobooks or those types of work?
Well, I love being an audiobook narrator. I mean, it's like the best job I never knew I wanted. When none of us were growing up thinking I'm going to be an audiobook narrator. That wasn't a thing, right? So when it came to me, and it turned out that, and all credit to Kevin Thompson, who is the person who brought me into this industry, really. He was there at my very first audiobook audition, and I was able to book my first job working with him, and the rest is history. But it's made me a better storyteller in all the other areas of my career. I think it's made me a better teacher, but it's definitely made me a better stage actor, better television actor. It's just made me a better storyteller. I think about story in a completely different way than I used to before I was an audiobook narrator. I think about the way in which good writing means that you can, I use this analogy a lot. It's like driving an automatic car, that you just put the car in drive and then you're just hitting the gas and the brake, right? But like the car is driving itself. That's your text. That's any good text that you get, right? As a narrator. And you don't want to suddenly like start grinding gears. It's an automatic car. It's okay. It's going to drive itself. You know what I mean? Like you're just dealing in like tone and color and temperature and speed and all the little like nuances. So I think that for me, there's the downside to being a narrator is that it can be lonely. I mean, I remember one of the only times I can count on one hand the number of times I've been in a studio with another narrator. And one of them was with you, Marc, when we did the Shakespeare's Star Wars audiobooks, and we were doing the Han and Leia scenes together. So it can be a little lonely, but I don't feel alone in the booth because I'm with all the characters. I'm with the author, I'm with the fans, I'm with the listeners. So in my mind, it sometimes feels quite crowded. But in terms of how the Star Wars stuff differs, again, it really has to do with just, and as you well know, we don't have a ton of time in the audiobook industry. We're getting final scripts very close to, sometimes the night before we're going to record, sometimes after we've recorded, and we have to go back and do inserts to honor the final version. So for me, it's just always wanting to make sure, and this is where, Kevin and the producing team comes in really supportively and strongly. I just want to make sure we're honoring what's out there and making sure that we are being accurate to the history of these stories, and being able to just sort of relax and know that there's a few redundancies in terms of there's eyes and ears on all of this, and people are looking at it to make sure that we're staying consistent and everything. It's cool to be a part of something so big. So I love that.
That's awesome. Kevin, what about you? Do you find that there's any difference between working on Star Wars audiobooks versus other audiobooks you direct and produce?
Well, mainly it's like January just said, it's the history. There's a huge history and there's a huge set of rules. Other people have built in this universe, and you yourself have built in this universe. So it's like, okay, it's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
But that said, like January said, once you have a strong house, once the frame is there, there's a lot of room to play, and you can kick the wood a little bit, right? Yeah. You can slam the doors now and then because the house is going to hold up. You can have a little bit of fun, and that's part of the excitement. Is continuing what the history of what's been set up, but then finding the new twists and the new turns and the new voices and the new and what's unexpected and what oh my God, they're going to die when they hear this.
Right.
That kind of moment,
Yeah.
Whether it's the fifth word in the new Thrawn series,
Yes.
right? When I read that, you know, whatever it was, I just started giggling. I was like, oh my god, the fans are gonna go nuts. Because they changed. Well, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't listened to it yet or read it, but yeah,
Oh,
it's all of that kind of, and those little moments are sometimes big and they're sometimes small.
yeah,
And the small stuff is just as fun as the big stuff.
totally.
Yeah, in a way funner, more fun.
So January, you have to do a lot of different character voices and aliens and genders and all kinds of crazy stuff. What is the weirdest thing or weirdest voice you had to come up with in a Star Wars episode?
Oh, Kevin, help me remember when we
Wow.
were doing the first From a Certain Point of View,
Mm-hmm.
and we did the story about the creature in the trash compactor.
Oh my god, that was my favorite story.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a great story.
It was a phenomenal story, but it was like so unbelievably, and it was, of course, this creature's internal thoughts.
Wow.
And you know, we've never really seen it, and then we got descriptors about it, you know, and its whole body and what it really, and you know, I was like, okay, and tentacles and water, and you know, how does it live, what does it feel, you know, that was my favorite one, I think, in terms of just like trying to, you know, I went back and watched the scene a bunch of times and just trying to think about like, what does this want to sound like?
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
so that one just always stands out to me as something that I got to do that I never thought I'd get inside the head of that creature.
I love
those stories were really tough because, like you said, because they tie into something we know so well, right? But it's like how to make that new and how not, when you introduce that voice, people not to go, oh no, it doesn't sound like that.
Right.
That creature who I don't know doesn't sound like that.
Right. It feels really risky and it feels really loaded. Like how can I find some place to land that will honor, and you know, generally speaking, again, that just means I go back into like my 7-year-old brain.
Yeah.
You know, like what my first reaction or thoughts were about the first time I encountered that thing. That just feels like the truest way to come at it.
And that's almost always the right answer too. I
Yeah.
would guess, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, because they're made for kids. Originally, Lucas was made for kids. So yeah. So Kevin, you've gotten to work. You've mentioned already, but you've gotten to working on the novelizations of the prequels and the sequels, and even the original films. Like, what was it like, kind of working on the novelizations or the adaptations and having early access before everyone else? Like what's that like for you personally?
Well, it's odd, and it's a little scary, and they've always been different. Like the episodes 4, 5, and 6 years later, right? But then like episode 1, Phantom Menace, I didn't do the novelizations. I did for Kid Rhino. I did what I got the gold record for, the read along for kids. And then I did the a Junior Jedi kit, and very fancy blister pack, very fancy. Like they won awards for it, like Rhino does. And then I got a full year before Phantom Menace came out. The summer before, I was working on it.
Wow.
And I had a secret title. At that point, it was like getting the biggest licensing contracts ever. Yeah. Right. So it was, you know, we're relaunching Star Wars. Oh my God! And because Lucas invented licensed products, as you know, behind Marc. Right. And then I had to audition people for it, and I couldn't tell them what it was. And I got samples. Right. At that point, they had voice samples of pretty much everything except for the Trade Federation. I didn't get those guys until like later. And then, so I had actors coming and say, what is this? I said, I can't tell you. And then do this, do that, do like, this guy's sort of Irish, Liam Neeson. This guy's sort of, you know, Scottish, you know, Ewan McGregor. And then I would say, I'm going to play you something. And I need you to imitate this. And they go, okay. And then I played him some Jar Jar Binks.
Oh,
And I should have had a video camera roll.
oh, no.
Like, what the F was that? I said, I can't tell you. Just you have to do it. And then I cast the whole thing, mixed the whole thing in surround sound, right? It took a while. It's short, but it took a while. It took a few days. And then it got sent off to Lucas for approval. And then it was kicked back saying, why don't they just use the voices from the movie? So all the work from all those actors pushed aside. They sent us all the lines from the movie. We slipped in, and that was that.
Wow.
Can I say something about this while we're on this topic? Because this recently came up in a conversation with some acquaintances, and I just want to be a voice for the difference between audio drama and audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think a lot of people think, right, like, why don't you just use the clips? Why don't you just use why don't you hire it? Why isn't everything full cast, right? And I totally understand that impulse, but that's audio drama. And that has its own lane, and it's really exciting and really fun. But audio books, the handshake deal you make is that someone's reading you a book, right? It's like, that's the deal. And that's actually the desired experience that a lot of people want to have, because it mimics an experience that most of us, again, had as children, the sheer joy of having a book read to us.
Oh, wow.
And so I love that both exist in the Star Wars audiobook world, that we do audio drama and that we do audiobooks. But I just sort of, I think a lot of people have a question of like, well, why don't they just do it this way? And it's like, they're actually two really distinct forms, and they work differently, and they provide different experiences. And I think it's great that we have space in the Star Wars fandom for both.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well put. That's great. January, do you have a favorite Star Wars book or Star Wars character you got to perform?
Phasma.
Oh, that's awesome. No delay.
Man, that book, I just felt so cool.
Yeah.
It was to be able to, so at that point, we had only heard, 2 lines?
Yeah.
We'd only heard 2 lines. We'd heard like 12 words or something from Phasma. And luckily I was a Game of Thrones fan. So I was like, Gwendolyn Christie, I got you. And I was so thrilled to be able to, Delilah did an amazing job with the book, but like being able to go into a character's backstory so deeply, and to truly understand what it is that this person has lived through that made them this person that we only got to hear say about 12 words. I just found that completely thrilling. And it was a great title too. It was just a great title. Yeah. So yeah.
The Mad Max universe was amazing.
Yeah.
To live in it was really cool.
Yeah. That's cool. Kevin, how about you? Do you have a favorite one? I know it's like picking out of your own children, but like, do you have a favorite?
Oh God. I just this morning was talking about Kenobi.
Yeah.
I think that's just an amazing book. Just I don't know. I like a lot of them. All of them. I have some favorites. I think the books are great. I think some of them I didn't do justice to the book. I don't want to talk about which ones, but I think that occasionally I was like, oh my God, and then I didn't quite do the full justice to it. Some I feel I make them better than they are occasionally. I love the Shakespeare ones. I think were a blast to do.
Yeah, they were.
I love the audio dramas. Dooku and Afra were a blast to do, and the one coming up is going to be a blast to do. It's been announced.
Okay. You're right. You're okay. Yeah.
And all the other stuff in the future. The High Republic stuff I think is great. I love Light of the Jedi. I love the kids ones. They're all great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just have a couple more questions. I know we're about to run out of time, but January, you do now. You're teaching acting now, is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, do you have any advice for any aspiring performers out there that might want to pursue audiobook narration or just performing in general? Like what do you generally tell people that are looking to get into this?
So I came to audiobook narration as an actor, so I have a bias toward that path, which is what I tell a lot of my students. But I do believe that coming at audiobook narration from the perspective of an actor, especially if what you're interested in doing is this type of narration, has great merit because it's really character driven and action driven. And that's what we do in acting class, right? That's what we do when we're training to be actors. We have to understand objectives. We have to understand backstory. You know, we have to understand all of these things in order to be able to implement them when we're inhabiting the characters. But the best advice I've ever heard, I did not make this up, but the best advice I've ever heard about people becoming audiobook narrators, if that's what they want to do, because as you both well know, we sit in a studio for 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day for consecutive days until the book is done. And so the best advice is that you should take a book you love, like your favorite book, and you should sit in your most comfortable chair in your favorite room with great light. And you should sit and read that book aloud to yourself for an hour. And if you still want to do that for 6 or 7 or 8 more hours in a less comfortable chair in a room without windows, et cetera, then yes, you should definitely think about becoming an audiobook narrator. So that's the good litmus test, I think, for folks.
That's a very good test. I agree. So Kevin, I did want to ask you, you mentioned that we have started working on the High Republic audiobooks, and it's very exciting. It's this whole new era in the Star Wars universe. What has that been like for you, and how do you go about creating like a new soundscape and new design for this new era?
There's always been a fair amount of invention of new effects because we have a huge library of Lucas effects that we've been given and asked for over the past 25 years, but we still need, there's new stuff we still have to come up with every book, and this was a matter of coming up with a new kind of soundscape, which I don't think we haven't really done as completely up until then. Was coming up with a whole range of ships, a whole way of treating ambiences and going a little more Mandalorian, where it's a little quieter, so stuff can poke through a little bit more as opposed to kind of a wall of sound. So, and working designing ambiences that are more 360 and putting some sounds behind us. So when there's an ambience in the ship, normally it's just like a rumble, right? Maybe a little telemetry. But we create, I said I want to put like little noises in, make it a little more atmospheric. A distant bonk, bink, spread out over a 3 or 4 minute, loop that we can just put in for, the fighters or the bigger ships, just approaching it differently. And also bringing in new non-John Williams music to kind of expand the sonic landscape, to have like for the Song of the Jedi, bringing in, that's kind of a mixture of music and sound effects, and then just coming up with new cues for the High Republic, just some more heroic kind of non-John Williamsy stuff.
Yeah. I've heard feedback, and people seem to really be enjoying that. Like it does seem to be like really freshening up things, and people are really liking that. So
yeah, it might be jarring to fans at first, like, well, what is that?
Yeah.
What movie is that from? I have never heard that. But, I do it. I try to do it where, wearing it, making sure it fits. That's the most important thing, of course, but also making sure it's surrounded by enough Williams stuff, so it kind of fits in the same library, and it's kind of handed off, and it's and then another, John Williams cue after that to kind of, bring it back into Star Wars, but also to expand the universe. They used to say back in pre-Disney, if there was, before the story group existed, if there was a contradiction, like, I thought he was right-handed, or some whatever, and the response was always, "It's a big universe."
That's great.
I need that on a t-shirt.
Seriously, that is so good.
There was, and I just heard, working with one of the Clone War guys, it was Sam Witwer, I think, who worked, closely with Lucas on creating Darth Maul and some other stuff. But there was a question about pronunciation, and Lucas is just like, people say different ways.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
And I was like, oh,
that's-
thank you. Can I get that in writing?
But that's such a good point, because this is something that we deal with in the larger audiobook world all the time. How many times have we gotten to a moment where even just between narrator and director, or engineer, narrator and director, it's like, I say it like this, well, I say it like this, well, I say it like this. And you know, regionalisms exist.
Yep.
And why wouldn't regionalisms exist in this vast universe, you know? So it's actually, that's a good point, Kevin. I'm gonna say that next time we're working on a book.
That's right.
What George Lucas says.
Yeah.
It's a big universe.
Well, guys, unfortunately, we are at the end of our time, but thank you guys so much. This was really, really fun. And if you've enjoyed our conversation today, please considering donating. We hope you're enjoying Rebelthon Strikes Back. Kevin, January, thank you so much. This was really great.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Marc.
Bye, guys.